Right, again, we seem to be having problems this morning. Never straightforward. We're going live. Right, now we do seem to be streaming, because up until now we've had messages that it's not a good signal and things like that. So, welcome back. Hopefully, apologies for the difficulties. It's all these sort of technical issues. We're working on a bespoke spoon. We just started working on that twist on the stem. Hopefully, we'll be able to show you how we make this bespoke love spoon in oak. For some reason, there's been signal issues and all sorts. I don't know what's going on there, to be honest with you. So, we forget about that and we carry on with working on the love spoon. So the first thing that we've done the twist on the stem. We've started that anyway. We were explaining that this is a piece of oak, but not the easiest of pieces of oak. It's a little bit on the harder side of the sort of spectrum. We've just done the sort of waves. They're not really waves, ripples in the water just below the swans. So that's what we're working on at the moment, and then we're going to work on this design sort of bottom to top. So that's the way we're organising it, but there's no set ideas. You can organise your carving however you want to, really. There's not a set, it must be done in this particular way. I was explaining at the start that one thing you can do when it comes to carving your love spoons or whatever carving you're doing, a sort of beginner's mistake would be to leave the most difficult carving to the last and then come back to it, as the sort of more experienced carver would generally tackle the carving that is most likely to go wrong, the carving that is most difficult and troublesome first. Because if it does go wrong, you have the chance to remedy it. There we are. We just had Thomas the Woodcarver come in just to give me the thumbs up that the stream is actually working as it should be. Yeah, so as you can see, we're working in and around the swans. We're just doing that sort of detail, creating the effect of sort of ripples underneath. We will shape them back in the other way. We're going to work then to just do a little bit of separation between the two swans whilst they are still together, but they are two individual birds. The message, the idea with including swans upon a love spoon is the idea of swans partner for life. We look more closely at the symbols in this one. We've got a rugby ball, so an interest, a love for rugby. In this case, it was a misspent youth playing lots of rugby matches, is the story, I believe. And something then as a couple that they spent a fair amount of time in and around. The hearts then, you can see they're entwined hearts. We got the initials, they're going to be carved inside. And then at the top of the design, we have the bells. So that's what we're basically just going to go through, is the actual hand carving of each of those symbols. Now here's an interesting little bit, just as we start on the swans. So for anybody interested, as you probably all are, as you're watching this, in the wood carving, if I'm doing this one here, you can see we use a paper drawing, okay? But as I'm going along, as I carve the depth into the spoon, we're actually losing the paper lines. So what do? Well, what I'm going to do to make life easier, because at the end of the day, this is what we do. This is what we do for a living. So it's all about trying to make our life as easy as possible. So I'm going to carve the depth on this swan here, and I'm going to keep the markings on the swan on the other side, so I can use them as a rough sort of guideline. So we've got an angle coming in like so. And again, this isn't an exact science, it's hand carving. So, you know, you've got a fair amount of leeway in regards to what you do. You haven't got to get it absolutely perfect. Has to look nice. That's the key part to it. It has to look right. It has to look nice. But it doesn't have to be absolutely spot on in terms of, you know, you have to build up the shapes and work with it and, yeah, develop the design accordingly. So what we're just doing is just a few feathers, giving that sort of effect of a few feathers. I'm going to change for a smaller gouge. And these are the sort of decisions that you're making. We got a little feather coming in there as you're going along. You're sort of building up the design, building up the detail as you go. So we've done the depth that we want, and then we're just building up the detail after we've done the depth. So we've only got a few simple little, create that effect of the wings, the feathers. We're trying to create an elegant image of a swan. That's what we're trying to do. And again, a lot of what we're doing, because it's the work that we do, you're trying to get the maximum sort of effect for the minimum amount of work. In this particular design then, I was explaining at the start, there are several hours that will have been spent on this love spoon to get it to this stage. So you've got to design it, and designing is an area that we spend a lot of time on. Reason we spend a lot of time on the design is if you can sort of iron out a lot of the issues in your design, it certainly makes a life easier for the work later on. So it's basically, if you design something that's got issues, then you're going to be dealing with those issues through the whole process. Equally, when you come to cut it out, if you get it wrong in the cutting out, you will be dealing with those problems for the rest of the process. So it's, as you're going along, you know, any issues that you have in your designing, any issues that you then create as you cut it out, those issues are going to be there as you sort of continue through the process. You might be able to hear in the background, that's Thomas the woodcarver. He's packing up some spoons there. So that's a little job that he's working on at the moment, packing spoons that will be going off to different people for different occasions. From the online shop, of course. Yeah, and that's something that we're sort of constantly doing. That has been the one sort of saving grace for us as a family workshop throughout lockdown, have been the different sort of bespoke love spoon requests and the various orders then in our online love spoon shop. Now what you're going to see, what I've done, and I might, sometimes as you're doing these things, you think, no, I'll change it as I go on. That's the thing, is you don't have to get it right first time. You might not be happy with certain things, but what I've done, the beak then, I think you call it a beak on a swan. Is it a beak? I think so. That I've sort of pushed back. And then we're going to have the eye. Always try to make the eye fairly prominent. I think it comes from, like, I'm also interested in the photography, that sort of thing. And I'm sort of developing as I'm going along with my photography and all that sort of thing. And yeah, one thing, whenever you're taking a photo, the eye is always what you sort of focus on. It tells the story. So I always, with my carvings, it's interesting, I'm going to decide whether, probably, yeah, we make it a smiley swan. Yeah, with your photos, you try to focus on the eye quite often when you're photographing something, and you're trying to get that eye nice and sharp. And so I sort of translate those ideas then across to when we're carving spoons. I try to make the eye prominent, bring the eye out, make that sort of a prominent feature in the carving of animals and whatever you're carving, people. You know, if the eye looks a bit odd or you haven't quite got the eye right, I think it's very noticeable. So you can see we're just creating, there's a heart shape, and we're just creating a little bit of depth in and around those swans. So what I'm trying to do, to explain to you a bit better, what I'm trying to do is to make the swans the main feature. So with the heart is the surround, and it's significant, of course, having the swans in the heart, swans partner for life. But the main feature, of this section of the carving, it's those swans. So we're going to try and bring those swans out. Now, as we always explain, we've marked it out with a vertical grain. We mentioned that it's not the easiest piece of oak to carve, but it'll do the job. A little bit more pushing than normal. That's why one of the gouges we sharpened up just before we started, because I knew that this particular piece of oak, we got hold of this oak recently, some local oak, and I have found it a particularly hard piece of oak to carve. We use a lot of furniture oak, recycled oak, and that tends to be a little bit softer and a bit nicer to work with. So you can see we're getting there with that. I got a lovely little micro gouge, and I think though I'm going to take all the paper off that swan before I actually put the eye on it, because I'll be able to see it more clearly. So we're just going to do a little bit of detail on the bottom there. And when you're working, I'm working upside down on the swan now, so it'll be the right way round for yourselves, but for me it's upside down. So I will have to turn it around. But before I do that, I'm going to carve the other bits whilst it's in that position. Because if you're constantly turning it around, it takes a moment to turn it around in the vise. So here we go. We're just going to work on the top of that heart, just like so. Again, we're giving depth and detail. If you can hear my voice changing a little bit, it's because it is a hard piece of oak and there's a fair amount of effort going into carving it. We're getting a little bit of a sweat on working on this one, but that's wood carving. Some woods are a bit harder, some woods are a bit softer. If you were working in a slightly easier wood, if you were working in something like maybe a teak that carves a little bit more softly, if you were working in a nice piece of mahogany, let me think of some other ones. A lot of people use basswood, especially for learning. That's softer than working in this. You would basically carve this more quickly, and it would be easier as well. So the wood definitely has an impact, although we don't tend to give a different price for a different wood. Sometimes if it's somebody's requesting something unusual, like some people will request, can you make the lovespoon for me in, say for instance, yew or juniper? Well, because we don't have a lot of that and it's more expensive to sort of get hold of it, then yeah, you may put a bit of put a bit more on the price of the lovespoon. But generally speaking, we don't change the price of our lovespoons much based on the wood that we're working in. Oak then, for instance, said this a number of times before, there's a huge difference between the softest piece of oak and the hardest piece of oak. So I think we're just about finished on this side, and you can start to see that beautiful medullary ray. Hopefully you can see that on the camera, the character of the wood coming through. We're going to do the same on this side, so evening it back up. And you will see as well, we've secured it in the vise. We're going to tighten it up a little bit again. As we're sort of putting different pressures from one side to the other, you will see the spoon moving a little bit in the vise. But as long as it is pretty secure, it's fine. It's a lot easier than if I was trying to carve and hold it, for instance. That's a lot more challenging. And probably, to be honest with you, if I was going to try and whittle oak, it would be very difficult to sort of whittle a piece of oak because it is so hard. Not all oaks, this is the thing that we've sort of done at different times, not all wood is equal, not all woods are the same. Some are softer and easier to carve, some of course are a little bit harder. Just going to refocus our camera. It's because the camera that I use, the 5600, has it's live view. It can cut off if you don't refocus it. It's got a live view setting for half an hour. So the setup I've got is designed to run continuously. We run it off the mains, that sort of thing as well. But it's got a live view setting of a maximum of half an hour. But if you refocus it, you'll go for another half an hour. So you can see we're just about getting our depth and detail. I'm going to go back to this gouge because this is the one that I've sharpened specifically for this job. So we can get that one carving again. To be honest with you, actually, if Dad is about, are you there, Dad? Hello, here we are. We like to bring Thomas the Woodcarver into our live streams. It's always good value. Could you do me a favour?
Probably not. Just to show him working.
There we are. He's shellacking the spoons for us, he is. So that's one of the love spoons that's been ordered recently that he's shellacking. So he's getting that ready to go out. Now that one there, what I'm going to ask Thomas the Woodcarver to do, this particular gouge, I think it needs a little bit of a sharpen.
Okay, let me put this one back and I'll 5 minutes to leave with you.
This is what happens because when you sharpen one gouge, so I've sharpened this one, you start noticing then other gouges need sharpening. And basically, because we're doing so much carving, we do tend to leave them. They do go a little bit further than, you know, if we weren't doing as much, we weren't sort of carving most days, well, every day. You know, we're sort of doing 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, we're carving spoons. If we weren't doing that, maybe we would do a little bit more sharpening. The reason we do let them go a little bit more is because these have got to last a lifetime, really, because replacing 100-year-old gouges is not the easiest thing to do. Right, I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to get the bottom of the spoon largely finished off. What I will do once I finish carving it, there will still be some paper left. So we will actually stick that on the belt sander to remove any paper that's left over. So it's just to get it right down to the raw wood, and then it'll be from there, after you've done the work with the belt sander, we'll then hand sand.
Which one do you want sharpened?
Here we are, that's the one.
Okay.
You've got to find a route around everything now without kicking something over. I've set him up a bit of an assault course here to get round to our sharpening kit. Yeah, so we're just going to finish that off just whilst the spoon is facing this direction. We've got the other swan that we're going to go on to next. So that will, once we've done this bit on the bottom and once we've done the swan, we will actually have then the bottom portion of the love spoon carved. You see, it's not a massively time-consuming process for us. It is time-consuming, but you do start to get sort of tangible results within a reasonable amount of time. We've got to shape this. It's interesting. I'm going to just change there. It's just to fit the angle that we're carving at. Now I'm going to tighten that in the vise because that's moving too much for my liking. What we're doing, see, we're creating that effect of over and under in the design. And this is something we use a lot. Of course, with love spoons, symbols have meanings. So as we said, some of the ones on this love spoon, you've got the bells for celebration, the hearts entwined together, so togetherness. The swans that partner for life, the rugby ball because it's a personal interest, and then a twist on the stem represents binding and growing together. And here at the workshop we got asked about, you know, there's a lot of interest in the symbols and things like that, and a lot of what you'll read about symbols on love spoons, that's down to interpretation. And a lot of that interpretation has been done sort of throughout the 20th century and then into the 21st century. And yeah, it is literally that. It's interpretation. So we've always been reluctant here to restrict ourselves because different symbols can be interpreted in different ways. Now, the time that we're doing this then, we're constantly working with the grain. So you don't want to sort of be working across it if you can avoid, or against it, definitely. You know, you want to be avoiding those things. As much as you can, you want to be working with the grain. How we got on there? He's just coming back with the gouge. Have you picked your song for today that you're going to sing us?
No, haven't.
You haven't thought of a song?
Well, the trouble is, you've been pushing me so hard, I haven't had time to think.
He's been away, he has. He's been off gallivanting. He's been up to.
Are you going to use it now?
No, we're going to use it in a minute. Proper Welsh. I'll use it in a minute now. Thank you very much for that, Thomas. There we are. Right, so we're going to work on this stem. We're going to finish this off. So we'll have a nice shape on there. Afterwards, as I said, we're going to sand that. We're going to round it all off. And it's amazing, it always amazes me how much time you'll finish carving a spoon and you'll think, there we are, we're finished with carving. And it's amazing at how much time you actually end up spending. You spend finishing, and a lot of time goes into that aspect as well.
Well, you've got 3 coats of shellac as well, haven't you?
You've got 3 coats of shellac too. Yeah, so that's what Dad is working on this morning, is shellacking them. So I'm just going to take the paper off this one, and we got then the eye to go on as well. I'm jumping about a bit in my carving, which I know for anybody following is not ideal. But that is, to be honest with you, that's how I carve. I do tend to jump around a little bit, which is, it's not the best way of doing it. You know, you always say you should really have a structure, isn't it? Working top to bottom or bottom to top, something like that. But
you carve what you see, don't you?
You do. What it is as well, I carve slightly differently because normally, yeah, you would sort of organise it in that way. But because I sit down, I'm looking, I can do that bit, and that bit. So, for example, I can do this, this, and this whilst it's facing that way, and then turn it round and do the 3 things together facing the other way. So it's nice, as I was saying as well, because we've been using more recently this idea with the paper, it's nice to see the grain coming through. You see the character of the wood coming through as you sort of get rid of the paper.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, even when we've finished carving, it'll be great to just, hopefully we can do that, just put it on the belt sander, because you'll see the difference when you remove all of the paper. It really does, the wood, you realise how beautiful the material is that we work in. And that's a huge advantage, because especially when you're learning, if you've got a piece of wood that's got nice character to it, it's a big advantage, because the character in the wood can hide a multitude of sins, isn't it?
Yeah.
It can make up for any deficiencies in the carving itself. You're going to share some pearls of wisdom with us this morning?
Well, it's strange, because every time I'm watching you carve now.
Am I doing everything wrong?
And no, I'm thinking, it's that song again. There is a rose in Spanish Harlem. For some reason, why do I think of that song when you're carving?
I don't know.
Because you're not carving a rose.
Is it because Yelly's Spanish?
It could be.
And we know Yelly's watching. Hello, Yelly, if you're watching.
Hello, Yelly.
There we are. It's possible.
Yeah,
so
strange how your mind
so you can see,
works, you know.
I was explaining as well little things that we do. So you can see here what I've done. I thought, because I haven't carved, we've carved lots of swans, but I haven't carved it in this style. So I thought, it would be a useful little thing for people to see. If you're doing something new, something different, carve the one. So you've got the lines, see. So I can copy the lines from that side on that side, see.
I think it's, you know, I mean, I spent Oh dear me, 70. So yeah,
50 years.
well over 50 years carving, and sometimes you sort of. I always used to say there were 3 stages of carving. You get all excited when you start a fresh piece. You got the picture in your mind, and you got the picture on the wood, and then you start carving, and then that's your first stage. A lot of excited,
a lot of enthusiasm in that stage, isn't it?
And then it's your middle stage then next, and there's no set time. You can't say, oh, after 5 minutes, after 10 minutes, after 20 minutes. There's no set time. But you get to a point where you think, is this really sort of where I want to be? And it's that middle stage I find is probably a strange.
It's not an easy stage, is it?
Yeah, you sometimes have to tie yourself to the bench and just sort of stick at it, because it depends on what you're carving, whether it's a...
Well, this is an interesting point, because we've started, just to the side of the bench, we've started a very grand project. And I've actually, because as you said, Thomas Woodcarver's just been up the motorway to see my sister. Whilst you've been away, I've actually been thinking about that. And the problem that you have when we take on a big project is that you can kind of put yourself under pressure, to get it done. We basically, because we do a family collection of spoons and we do one for every year on that subject, don't forget we got that documentary coming up explaining about our spoons. You can start to get to this time of year and think, oh, we need to get that love spoon finished. And it's interesting because whilst Dad was away, I was talking with Yuli and I said, we're not going to put ourselves under pressure to do that for this year because we want to be able to enjoy that. So I've got a little idea for a love spoon. I had an idea for a love spoon. And so I got a few thoughts on what we might do, as opposed to putting ourselves under pressure to get that more elaborate, that more complicated job done. Because I think it would be a shame for us to not enjoy it and to sort of be rushing ourselves.
Was it? But back on those 3 stages, it's that middle stage where you seem to spend more sort of time, and you can't always see it taking shape, and so you sort of stick at it, keep chipping away, improving a bit here, a bit there, and then finally that 3rd stage, that middle stage ends, and you're on the home run.
I think this is as well. I think where you're talking about as well. I think there are 3 stages when you're learning things, whatever you're learning. There's that beginner stage, which again, as you said, you get a lot of enthusiasm. Then there's that sort of intermediate stage where you've progressed your skills, but you are still learning to agree. And then there's that more advanced stage. And an interesting thing I found when I was we're always still learning, but I found at different points that I would be doing a carving, for instance, and I would get almost fixated on a particular thing, and I'd be carving away and thinking, I can't get it right. And when I was in that sort of phase, I found it quite useful to walk away from the carving, and quite often you'd walk back to the carving and you couldn't even remember the thing that had been worrying you, the thing that you'd been really worried about. You'd come back to the carving and you wouldn't even remember what that thing was.
It's there now. You're starting to put some of the detail. Although you've got a lot of other, you've got the bell to carve, you've got the initials, you've got the rugby ball, but you're starting to put some of the details on the swan.
Yeah.
And that's what starts to make the swan sort of.
Well, again, as I did this,
to look more lively.
Well, again, as I did this, you may have noticed when I was doing the other swan, I was looking at the swan's head, and it's the same. Look at the swan's head there, and I'm looking and thinking, God, that looks a bit odd. And then what I've done is, as I'm basically, that's why I decided to sand it. And as I sanded it, I thought, there we are. That's what it needed. It needed a bit of smoothness, because when you're carving, you're also thinking, I've been fortunate enough to photograph swans, And they're very elegant and they're very smooth though on the top of them. So sanding it makes sense to me because a swan is very sort of smooth in the appearance. The neck is very elegant, but it's a sort of smooth finish I think is most suitable for a swan.
And I always remember when I first tried, I mean I'm a carpenter joiner by trade, so it's amazing how many carpenters are not inclined to even have a go at carving. They see it, and it was a separate job altogether. Yeah. And in some respects, it still is. But my first attempt at a simple spoon, the wood and it seemed really, really hard. And then when I started making carving teak, although you know, they say as tough as teak, I found that teak was more sort of, it was, because it was a bit of oil, it was like an oily timber, the chisel seemed to glide through it more so than when I was working with oak. Well, so don't get put off by the first attempt at carving.
Another thing as well is don't get sort of stuck and fixated on, you know, because it's very interesting. There's a lot of social media stuff. There's a lot of, you know, I mean, this is social media now. But there's a lot of forums, and I see people will ask questions, and a lot, when it comes to wood, they'll ask a question, what should I use? And there's a consensus, and that is, it's as if that is absolute 100% fact and true for everyone. But if something doesn't suit yourself, it doesn't mean necessarily that, you know, for instance, wood carving is not for you. Yeah. You may be the one that will actually progress in the wood carving, but you may just need to learn in a different way. So, I mean, myself's a good example because I actually learned to carve using beech. And it was because beech was quite robust. And I found that because I was a bit heavier-handed, until I found my own style, I found I could get away with a bit more in beech, as opposed to something like lime. Lime was very what the Americans call basswood. Anyone watching the US, the lime for me was it just wasn't robust enough for me. Yeah. So it made a huge difference to me using beech, which, you know, you'd speak to most carvers and they'd sort of say, well, that's crazy, you know, starting with such a hard timber.
Yeah. One of the things we say, there are no rules or regulations. You've got safety issues, yes.
Yeah,
but
be sensible.
There are no rules and regulations as far as
we always emphasise.
And also, again, at the end of it, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? So, you know, you can, I mean, there are two sides for us, of course. There's the commercial side of it. We have to satisfy the customer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you sort of.
I think that we're always really mainly trying to get it. You know, ultimately, you know, especially today, most customers are sort of anonymous, really, because we're in contact. You know, years ago we would be in contact more face to face with the customer, as now it's sort of people all around the world, and it's by email. So it's difficult sometimes for us to understand what they are thinking of. So we very much sort of aspire to a certain standard. I think that's the best way of putting it.
An interesting thing as well, when we carve initials for people.
Yes.
We you know when we, because we, you know, especially if you've got coaching and you've got a number of people and they've asked for two, say, letters on a heart, and you may just carve an A and a B, and we've got a list of
we actually show people how we do them.
If I can just pop that in there, we show people the lettering that they're going to have. And
we've actually done a video on that, how we do that on our YouTube channel.
You do the letter and certain letters, then people say, could you do a bit more
Well,
on the curve, or could you do a bit more?
Can you entwine the
Yeah,
hearts?
can you entwine them?
Sorry, can you entwine the initials and things like that? And we usually say if you can draw it, we can carve it, because it's difficult to understand what somebody else is looking for.
And that's what I'm saying, and that is the point. Somebody's idea of an A and a B will not necessarily be yours. So in that sense, bit of psychology in there, really. You've got to try and work out what the customer
somebody's looking for
is actually looking for.
And it's the same. I mean, you know, we have people saying that's lovely and sharp as well. That's the one that Thomas will carve sharpened for us. So that's doing a lovely job.
Well, it makes life easier, doesn't it?
It does. And on this particular piece of wood, you need it, because
you can hear, if I shut up and you carve, you can hear the sound of it.
this,
I don't know if you can pick that up on the sound, but
hopefully that'll come through.
yeah.
On the monitor, I'll just go around this side again, and it's just where it's cutting cleanly. I'm actually,
That's it. Yeah. Not too much.
there we are. No. We'll round that all off afterwards. Yeah, I'm actually going to do a video on that. I haven't told Thomas the Woodcarver this, but I'm hoping to film that and to get that out in the next couple of weeks. I got a video idea where we sort of talk about the difference in gouges. So yeah, we're going to do a bit of a versus, and it's a little bit of we've got a few videos coming up about the tools, because tools I know is an area that people are very interested in. Long and short of it is that a sharp gouge, it does make a big difference with certain woods and with certain spoons that we carve. It's not to say that, you know, sort of lower quality tools and different things you can't get away with, but it is best if you can get hold of a good quality sharp carving gouge. It does make a huge difference to us.
I mean, we're so fortunate. We work working on a material. Wood is so undervalued. It's a superb material to work with, and we are so fortunate to be able to use this material. I think you know, my grandson now, it's his first year in the what we would call the secondary school, and woodwork has sort of changed so much in schools, and even the subject of lovespoons, really, is an excellent subject for craft teachers to take up, because you can design your spoon on paper, and then you can produce your spoon in many other materials, and you can tell a story with it, and you can start it. I can remember in the infants and junior schools, we would actually do nature walks, and you would be looking at the trees in the autumn time as the leaves were changing and everything. It's more difficult perhaps today to do that kind of thing, but wood, it is such a lovely material to be working with. I mean, we made our living from wood. It's an undervalued material, and for anybody, whether you're starting off, whether you're in the middle of carving, whether you you know, like me at the end of carving, you appreciate the trees around you. I mean, we've got these ash trees now that are suffering, but it's such a lovely material to work with. And as you're working that there, you're developing, you're seeing the grain, the character, the colour of the wood. It's such a beautiful material to work with.
Yeah. So yeah, I think if we go back to, you know, what I'm working on here now, we've moved up where I'm pretty happy with my swans. We probably have a different opinion from Thomas, but I'm pretty happy with. What do you think of that, dude?
Well, it was an ugly duckling, but I suppose, yeah.
We get away with that.
Yeah, and in case, when you put that shellac on as well, it sharpens it. You know,
Yeah.
you see then, often you see perhaps, oh, I better go over that bit.
Again, yeah, that's right. So I'm happy with that. We've moved on now to the rugby ball. As you can see, what I'm doing is to shape the rugby ball. So we're just giving that, we're giving it, because of course, you know, you're thinking all the time, we've been thinking about those swans, elegant, you've got to get that elegant shape, that elegant form. Now moving on to the rugby ball, of course, rugby balls are oval in shape, and we've got that single line. We use more of a traditional rugby ball with the laces, because it gives it a more sort of distinctive, you know, it makes it more clear that it's a rugby ball. So we're just getting that rounded off shape, that rounded off oval shape to the rugby ball.
It's an impression, isn't it?
That's
so
right.
when you look at it, you get an impression of a rugby ball.
Yeah, so we're just rounding that off. I'll also go back over that with some sandpaper, just to smooth it over, because of course.
Another thing when you're carving,
Yeah.
you know, you're sitting, you're sitting there, you're carving away, and obviously you're talking now into the mic. You're talking to people who are hopefully listening. But when you are carving, you're thinking about, you know, your mind is concentrating. For instance, on that rugby ball.
Yeah.
So you're thinking.
Well, what does a rugby ball look like?
Yeah, but also you're thinking of times when.
I was thinking about William Webb Ellis, actually.
There we are. And that's what happened.
So I was just thinking, what else would you have used for representing rugby? And I was thinking, of course, you know, you've got William Webb Ellis, haven't you, and the origins of rugby.
I mean, we normally would avoid, on our own lovespoon, we would avoid anything to do with rugby, because you get the wooden spoon, for instance.
So yeah, it gives the
when you
spoon a
lose.
different connotation, doesn't it?
And so we avoid recording anything about rugby, because whilst you win, sometimes you lose, probably more often. So
yeah, and rugby and sport has given the spoon, the wooden spoon, a different connotation. As with us, you know, a wooden spoon is something that has a message. You know, the spoon, it's mixing and blending, bringing people together.
But I mean, you would, as you were carving this spoon, you would be thinking of the bells. You would be shaping the bells.
Yeah.
And then you would be thinking about. I mean, it takes your mind then into so many areas. It takes you into church bells. There's history, for instance, in our local church about the bell. It actually came to East Williamston. It came from America.
I'm thinking of Quasimodo.
Well, there we are.
Is it Quasimodo?
Yeah, that's the one in France, isn't it? And of course, I think it had the recent fire out there. So your mind starts to go into things like that.
And quite often for ourselves, because we do such a volume of carving, like this is going on YouTube, you know, that's quite often what I would do is to put a documentary or something on YouTube and learn and watch all sorts of other things whilst you're doing it. The only time that you're probably likely to have us sort of go quiet, because we're used to demonstrating, talking about what we do and explaining what we do as we carve. That's sort of very much our day job. We just focus that again to keep that live view going. Yeah, so we're used to doing that. So we very much put all sorts of other things as almost distractions as we're doing it. The only time, as I was saying, you'll hear us going quiet is if the wood makes a bit of a funny noise. And if anybody's sort of learning carving, you know, that's a sign, that's always a sign that something may have gone wrong, is if you hear a noise. I haven't heard a noise, by the way, that's why I'm still talking. But if you do hear a bit of a funny noise, that's a sure sign that something might have gone wrong. You know, you might have split the wood or something like that.
I think I may have mentioned before, obviously, because I used to work in the therapy, in the occupational therapy. It's a therapy. You sort of, the wood it's
you can lose yourself
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
And it's great because I'll be honest with you, I couldn't tell you whether I'd been carving this for. I know I've been carving at least. I would say I've been carving at least half an hour this morning, but I couldn't tell you beyond that exactly how long I've been carving. Perhaps you can enlighten me on that one.
I wouldn't have a clue, do
No.
No.
And this is where as well, you know, because for jobs like this, for bespoke love spoons, it's not easy for us to price for bespoke love spoons because you just don't know how long they can take us. And you're working in a natural material, and you can start working on a piece of wood, and there can be a void in it, there can be a flaw in it. And as you sort of go along, you can end up spending 3 times. If everything goes fine, it's easy. And as we do these live streams, I can guarantee at some stage, something's going to go wrong in the carving, and then we're going to be...
Well, 10 years ago, Dave, you certainly wouldn't have been carving like this, because we would have drawn the picture,
Yeah.
we would have transferred it with, say, carbon paper,
Yeah.
whereas now, so you are learning something. I mean,
absolutely.
I've only been at it just over 50 years, and I'm
Still,
still learning. So it's, this was a new way of for us.
yeah.
We've been using it now for a few years, but
It's a different method that we trialed. Initially,
So the
we
one
were
thing I don't
sceptical.
like about it though is because it's paper. I don't like, it's something you're thinking about.
You don't like carving. I don't like carving paper.
That's right, because
It's not good. It's not good for the gouges.
It's not good for those gouges. That's the only thing.
But it's the sort of lesser of two evils with it, because we used to use carbon paper more than a paper drawing, and the time involved in actually doing, using the carbon paper, and the drawing would sometimes slip and move and things like that, and other times, the carbon paper wouldn't show through and you'd have to draw it all over again. So it saved us from that point of view a lot of time.
And also, Dave, that is definitely something that we use quite a lot. We don't use it on all spoons, but definitely when it's got a lot of detail. And the what was I going to say now? We tried to use different machines, like the Dremel.
Well, that's popular. I know now. You'll see on YouTube, there's a lot of people doing Dremel carving. It's an area I don't know much about. I mean, we've tried it. We didn't. I'll be honest, myself. The main thing, it's a different ball game altogether. I'll be honest, I didn't particularly enjoy the process in the same way.
No.
It's interesting because
we have tried, haven't we?
We've tried
to find
it,
quicker methods, and
or
we can take this away, take that away. But at the end of the day,
I think it's
always
interesting
comes back to
because
this.
I mean, for instance, to give it a comparison, I also, as I've mentioned a few times, have an interest in photography, and I'm looking now to upgrade what we've got to something better. And I've looked at it a number of times, and the latest thing is the mirrorless camera. But again, I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy that as much because it's a slightly different method.
Do you want to break it? Do you want me to have a go?
No, I'm fine. I'm happy. This is I'm enjoying myself.
Okay.
We're making good progress, and
because again, that's something that we don't mind. I could come there now and start carving a bit.
Yeah.
And
we
it's
do a demonstration of that one time. We do a demonstration where, I mean, last week we did a demonstration where we carved our own styles of daffodils. Well, that was actually because we put that out to everybody whose was the best daffodil. It was a draw because nobody said anything. So there we go. So, but no, it's
when I learned my trade as an apprentice, people were so protective of their tools. You wouldn't dare use somebody else's tool.
Hammer and things like
that.
that.
Yeah, it was really.
On the subject of a hammer, that's another video we've got coming up. That'll be an interesting video for people, and that's talking about sharpening a hammer.
Oh yeah, sharpening a hammer.
And we haven't gone mad. We're going to be filming that soon. We're going to be talking about sharpening a hammer, and this is an old That's an old tradesman's trick, that is, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say it was a trick. It was something that's so important.
Yeah.
You've got to have a sharp hammer.
Yeah. And we won't say any more about it for now. But it's very interesting. It followed on. I saw some conversations where people were laughing. They were laughing at somebody on social media, and I thought that's a really good idea for the video. And we're going to be filming that one and talking about the importance of sharpening a hammer. And no, it's not a wind up. It's not some tradesman's trick or something like that. It is genuine. Back to this one. It's actually carved. This spoon, because you've just gone over the gouges. It's carved better than I was thinking. I've actually got through it far better and far easier. I am sweating a bit, but no, I'm happy with how that's carved. I think I've gone as far as I can there. So we're going to turn it around because we need to push these letters back. And again, simple principles, just to go over the principles that we're using. It's all about getting those different levels, different depth. So we're pushing the initials down into the hearts, just like so. Getting that depth and detail. Just carving them into... Yeah, and that is what you're basically doing, is to get different levels and bring things out and push them back. And those are the decisions you have to make and you have to learn as a wood carver. Which bits am I going to push back? Which bits am I going to bring out? And especially when you're doing things like flowers and animals and nature and things like that, you have to think, you know, if you do some advanced carving, like doing people, you have to think, you know, how do I push the nose? How do I bring the nose out? And some fun ways you can learn some of those skills. I enjoy doing that with cartoons because they're fun characters and they're carvings that are full of character. Yeah, and you can use it to do those sort of bits of detail.
About your mind starts to wander and you start thinking about other things when you're carving. Sometimes you're concentrating on that. And do you know what was in my mind now?
What's that?
As you were carving? It's nearly coffee time, dear.
It's nearly coffee time.
Yeah.
So that means I must have put a fair bit of time into this one so far.
Yeah.
And this is doing a live stream like this. This is great because Dad he's been flying. He was out in front of me. He had four spoons waiting. 4 spoons that he prepared for me to carve. So this is the 4th of the spoons. So this has allowed me to catch up, which is great because we start now tomorrow morning. So we start back and then we'll be looking what are the next ones that we've got to complete. And that's what we do. And of course now we're into September, so we're starting to plan everything. We're adding a few things for Christmas and things like that. And it's possibly a bit too soon for some to be talking about that, but that's what we're looking at. And we added a few new designs to our online shop. But this is the great thing, is that we're constantly doing different things. As we're doing this, we're talking to yourselves and we're thinking about different videos that we're going to bring you, different ideas. Remember, if you've got any things you want us to cover, you can get that in the comments section. We'd be delighted to hear. But yeah, it's all good fun. I think
I've seen other people as well, some other things other people carve. There's so many things, there's so many subjects that you can carve. You know, some people obviously they really enjoy carving birds.
Yeah.
And some of the things that people carve, beautiful things. There's such a variety. I mean, for me, I enjoy carving flowers as well. You know, there's simple things that you can carve, and you can get quite a sort of I say quick. The flowers come together quite quickly then and quite soon. You haven't got to spend hours and hours on them. Whereas some of the solid carvings, you know, like carving
faces and
takes a lot.
sculpture
You know, I
carving.
have to stick to it a bit longer, like, you know. But
Yeah,
that's coming together quite well now. In fairness, there's plenty of character and shape in that.
yeah,
And it looks like a nice piece of oak as well.
yeah, we're gonna have a nice bit of grain in this wood. Interestingly as well, a lot of people now, I'm not sure, I think one of the furniture companies has sort of managed to sell this idea to people, light oak. Now for us, oak is oak.
Yeah.
And you get a lighter coloured piece of oak and you get a darker coloured piece of oak. And it's really difficult because people are asking us now for light oak. Well, you know, some of the woods, until we shellac them, you don't actually know what colour they're going to go.
On us,
And ultimately with woods, as they age, they all darken. So that when we shellac this lovespoon, it will come up a colour, but over time, that piece of wood will darken and it will keep darkening.
Did we show this last week? The two
I
different
don't think we did.
colours of oak.
And I've made a few and put them through for finishing, for shellacking. Yeah, okay. Some of those have gone through.
Well, like those, you can see the backs of those two.
Yeah, those are two. I tell you what, Dad will bring in the ones that they haven't been shellacked, but he'll bring in just a couple just to see the difference in colour. Because it's fascinating, all the different colours and characters that you get in the wood. They're both oak, but they highlight how different the colours can be in that one type of wood. Now then, we're nearly there with the entwined hearts. Most of the sort of more difficult carving is done. We just refocus that one for the bells. That's the little noise of the shutter. So, for doing the bells, start off at the top to get the shape, just like so. Excuse the banging, that's the only way to do it. And then same again, shape the top of the bells.
There they are, there's the two different.
Here we are, we put them on screen for everyone. When we finish that one.
The one is the same
colour. Here we are. So that's the same sort of oak as you can see there. This one,
at least 200 years old, that one.
Yeah, several hundred years old, and you can see the difference in colour. But that doesn't always fit, because we've got other oak that is several hundred years old, and it's completely different colour again. So it doesn't necessarily mean, excuse me, just because a piece of wood is older, you know, that all woods, it's a natural thing. So it comes in all sorts of different colours, with different grains, different characters. That is the beauty. It's the variety. It's a fantastic material. And it does, as we've said a few times, it really does help you have a bit of an appreciation for nature. So you can see with this one, we've worked our way now. We're working our way through. We're right really at the top of the spoon now. So we're well on our way. I'm thinking what we might do,
Now there you see, I would be using a mallet.
There we are. Showing two different methods.
Yeah.
You know, for how you can do the same job. That's the thing. Find your own methods.
And I would do a mallet because I've gone 70, so it's easier to use a mallet now.
Yeah. And it
didn't perhaps as quick, but
and
it's
that's
certainly a lot easier.
Yeah, and I mean at this stage now, I've been sitting here carving this for.
It's a good workout, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I'm sweating now. I've been carving this now for a good little while, and I'm sweating, and I can start. You start to feel. If it wasn't for the fact we were doing live streams and things like this, I'd probably get up and have a little rest and have a little walk around. But I'm in my head now. You're talking about the things you're thinking of. In my head, for the last sort of 10 minutes, I'm thinking, right, we're pushing on to that finish line. We want to get it done.
I'm taking you out of it.
Yeah, Dad's a bit concerned there because it picked up in the vise. But it's just where the gouge gripped a little bit and picked it up. There we are. So that's just shaping a bit at the top. We put that piece on the top as well because it finishes the spoon nicely and it gives you somewhere to hang the lovespoon as well. Here we are. Now what I'm thinking as well, do you want to grab your, I think they're over there, yeah, so that you don't need to get them. They're over there, they are. I was going to say, I could demonstrate maybe carving a Christmas decoration or something like this. And when I finish this, what I would like, if possible, is for you to just take it in and to just take that paper off, just for everybody to be able to see. When we're going to finish off these bells now, we're going to get them done. But when I finish carving, if you can take it in, and just to take off the paper so everybody can see that grain.
What about the line? Do you want?
I'm going to finish carving it. I'm going to carve those. So I'll completely finish the carving of what we can do now. So that's the one little drawback as well. When Dad does take off the paper, we may find that, for instance, I may have to go back over the swans and do a bit more detail. But you can see this, this carving is coming along. And that's the nice thing with the lovespoon. That's the nice thing with hand carving. You can get something tangible. You can get good results in a relatively short space of time. It's tough stuff. Not an easy piece to carve. If you could see me now, we are sweating a bit, to say the least.
Yeah, but there's a line at the top there, isn't there?
Which is that now?
Just there. There's a line.
Yeah. But what I will do, see.
You'll put that in afterwards, is it?
The line?
Yeah.
No, we won't use that.
Oh, you don't use that one?
We won't use that line. What we do, we come round the side.
Okay.
Just like so. So we shape it. We shape all around the outsides, around the bells. Here we are. Now we're hoping as well. We're hoping that we're trying to organise ourselves a bit better, because this morning we've managed. Excuse the banging again. We've managed to organise ourselves a little bit more quickly this morning and get started with the live stream a little earlier. So we're hoping to be more sort of consistent, getting started Sunday mornings. So that's our time for live streaming at the moment on our channel is on a Sunday morning UK time. And it's not ideal because we do have quite a lot of interest from the US as well, but it's the best time for us to do it. It's usually when there's the least amount of noise around us. There we are. Maybe in the future we'll have to do a few live streams for the US. Again, if that's something that people would be interested in, put that in the comments. We'd be happy to start a stream at another time. Here we are. So we're just gonna, what we're doing is we're getting the depth in and around the bells before we start actually working on the bells. So all has to be done. Have you got any other thoughts on what we're doing?
No, I'm
He's gone very quiet.
I'm just thinking.
He's watching me carving here.
There's a lot of work to go yet. On this spoon.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Hopefully as well, this will be interesting. This love spoon is one that Bill has asked us to do. So when I email Bill to hopefully getting finished from here, when I email him, I'll basically say to him that he can see this being carved. So if it does go wrong, you'll see that we've had to start all over again. But as it stands, if we can complete this one. Now you see I picked that up in the vise. Reason for that, I'm going to just come in just around the edges there. Just to bevel the edge, just to finish it off. And again, it's, you know, it's finding your own style. For instance, I'm not so sure you wouldn't worry about doing that so much, would you?
No.
You wouldn't worry with, but that's just different ways that we both do the same thing. I've always done that because it's a good way of covering up my mistakes. You get a good idea as well for how far you got into it, with the amount of chip-ins on the floor and...
Which is interesting, because I remember years ago that was something I used to look for to see if I'd actually done any work.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're at it. Especially when you're starting off, you're quite nervous about taking too much off then, you know?
That's right.
So you tend to take
Go
a little bit
slowly,
off. Slowly, yeah.
If anything, I tend to be a little bit more... Again, it's doing it because you're doing it frequently. You tend to sort of get in there, and I tend to be a bit more. You can't make an omelette without cracking eggs. But only now, years ago, I would have been the same in terms of slowly, you know. And that's the thing. However you do it, things will go wrong from time to time. But that's the skill of wood carving: is sort of being able to use that, being able to do something, even if something goes wrong. Now, I'm definitely sweating, but we're going to get those hearts finished off. Reason as well we like to do the live streams, you know, there's a lot of interest in the lovespoon tradition. We like to be able to show everyone that, look, you know, there are lovespoons that are still being hand carved here in Wales. There are people that are still doing it using, you know, hand carving methods. We get asked as well because, you know, we're not interested in hiding anything that we do.
I think as well, Dave, the main media,
yeah,
right? They cover cookery,
yeah,
right? If there's one cooking program on, there's a dozen cooking programs on,
yeah,
right? There's fashion programs where people make their own clothes, right? There are pottery programs on. There are all sorts. I was watching a program recently, somebody out in one of the African countries making wedding, like necklaces,
yeah,
right? And the incredible thing there, the beads that they were using, which country were they from, Dave?
No idea.
China. You know, and you know, so you see documentaries on all sorts of materials and you know, painting programs, you know, where people actually compete with one another as far as painting programs. But wood carving, and especially in Wales itself, the media seems blind to what actually goes on in Wales.
Well, it's for us, as I said, we like to highlight, we like to show how we're still hand carving lovespoons here. We keep our workshop open so everybody can come and see. You know, it's a lot quieter this year because of the situation with COVID, but we still allow people to come in and see how we make our spoons. We don't hide things in terms of the basic outline is cut out using the Hegner scroll saw. But again, that is a skill in itself. You can't, you know, this idea that the machine does anything is ludicrous. The machine, what it's doing for us, it's a method that we can use to cut a basic profile, but you need tremendous skill to cut that basic profile correctly. If you have somebody using a scroll saw and they haven't got the ability to use it correctly, my job then trying to carve it is tremendously difficult because we're dealing with all the issues that the poor sort of scroll saw work would potentially be putting into the job. We get asked then, so why don't you do it? I know, you know, that there's such and such, and They only use hand tools, and that's great, fantastic, and I appreciate the time and the skill that goes into sort of cutting out using a coping saw, and we can do that ourselves. Problem with that for a business like ourselves is that we sort of have to be realistic, and the customer doesn't want to pay 5 times the amount for the work.
Well, of course, what you are seeing, in fairness, we are competing against a lot of Welsh lovespoons that have been made in China. So I mean, obviously they can be cheaper. Or either if they're not made in China, they're made in Africa.
Yeah.
You know,
and then so what we're getting at is that what we're trying to do is to keep it where we are still making lovespoons here in Wales, and you can still see us making lovespoons because it's a lovely tradition. It's a lovely material, and we do enjoy making our lovespoons. So we're getting closer now to finishing. We've got a lot of the paper off the design. The main area that we're going to have to try and get the paper away is just below these swans and on the stem of the lovespoon. But hopefully we can get that done.
It'd be a good study for anybody. I know you did it in university, Dave. You used the lovespoon as your final sort of piece, didn't you?
Yeah, we did a lot of research into the lovespoon. We looked at it as a cultural icon of Wales. That's what we looked at it.
Because if you want to see some of the very old lovespoons, at Welsh Folk Museum at St Fagans, they've got some very interesting ones there. So you can, anybody interested in researching it, they can see them. And some, on some of these antique programs, sometimes some lovespoons pop up on there. They're really interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of... It's interesting on that point, actually. There have been a lot of antique lovespoons sort of surfacing recently. Far more than myself, who sort of studied it, far more than I would have ever sort of thought. I've amazed, in fact, actually, that there's the volume of lovespoons, antique and vintage lovespoons out there, sort of that have been...
You do wonder sometimes whether they are actually... You
do wonder, because they certainly haven't been publicised then until... the recent times, so it's interesting to see some of the different things. Right, we've got we're getting towards then. We got these bells to finish off. We've shaped the top there. All right, let's have a little look. Just like so. Yes, we got that. We've got to do the insides around the top, and let's see where we can. This is nearly within the stages of nearly there. Let's have a look. Let's keep shaping it.
What do you want to get to a point where you can take the paper off, is it?
Well, I want to get us to a point where Dad can go in next door and to take off that paper.
The only bit you've got to do is a little line around the bell, isn't it?
No, there isn't a line there.
No, the little...
Oh, the little... Yeah, I'm with you.
Little decoration.
Yeah, we'll show you now just how we carve. Bells are always an interesting one for carving because of the shape of them. Sometime the middle piece you end up carving that way, so up. The other side is going to carve better carving down. So I'm just going to take out those little bits where we cut in by accident, just like so. We need that one there to do the top. And this now has become, because we still hand carve our lovespoons, this has now become our sort of bread and butter, really, where we do
interesting one there now as well.
Bespoke spoons.
You've almost lost the marks there. Now normally, you see, I would have that ring where
Yeah.
you put these little bits. I would have that slightly lower. It's
Yeah.
only, but again, you see, it just shows that there aren't any rules or regulations. It's however the individual
Sees it.
interprets the bell.
So, we're on to, I think we got that pretty much shaped around the top on that bell. I'm going to do the same on the other one.
Do you think that should be lower, that line there?
The line,
Yeah, when you put the line around. just to give the
I
impression.
tend not to worry about that too much.
Okay.
That's a leading question, that is. So I interpret that, see, from Thomas the Woodcarver, that he's suggesting that should be lower. That's what he's thinking. He's asking me, but he's not. He's thinking that should be lower. But I don't worry too much about that. We'll concentrate on getting the shape. It's just a little bit of decoration. Some people do it higher, some people do it lower. That's the nice thing with the carving, is that you do it how it sort of suits you as the carver.
As long as you do make the line on the two bells the same, that's all that counts, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're dealing with as well, you're looking at this, you're looking at it, and there's a little part to the process. Look at that. I'll have to use the mallet on that. That piece of wood doesn't want to come away.
Tough, eh?
Yeah. There we go. We had one little bit of wood that just didn't want to come away. Oh, do you want to check there? I'm going to send him over. This could be the end of the live stream, because I'm sending Thomas the Woodcarver over to check.
What am I going to do?
You've got some comments on the right hand side. Don't touch any cables.
Oh, Yolanda,
Oh, hello, Yelly.
I like a lot.
Good, good. And the other one?
Yolanda with a smiley face.
Brilliant. Thank you, Yelly. We're nearly there. We're nearly there. We're nearly finished. I got a little bit of sand in. A little bit of sand in to finish off. And then Dan's going to put it on the belt sander. Now I got a bit of work as well, just in and around there. I'm going to sand the bells too. But we are now very much at the end of this project. And we've covered a number of different things. We've gone through controversies. We've gone through carving. We've gone through the wood. We've gone through the tools.
Well, I still see quite a bit of work on that spoon, I must admit. I still see.
Yeah.
And I'm being pessimistic, I know, but I can still see quite a bit of work to...
Well, I can see a fair amount of finishing and
That's what I mean,
sanding.
yeah.
But I think in terms of carving, we are largely there with the carving. But we shall see. I think we'll be done in the next sort of 5-10 minutes in terms of carving. I think we'll be at the end of this particular project. Now, as you know, we're here in West Wales. It's a nice day today. It's a sunny day at the moment. It's a nice autumn day. You notice in the local area it's starting to get a little bit cooler. But this now would normally be us going into probably our busiest time of year.
Yeah.
But this year is a bit of an exception, so we're constantly sort of waiting to see what the different weeks, what the different days bring us. Now, this is the bit here. I just felt that the grain with that one, it was happier going the other way. And that's something we looked at last week. You very much got to take note of what that grain is telling you. If it wants to go in a particular direction, then you need to follow what it's actually guiding you to do. It's not good trying to force the wood to do something that it doesn't want to do. You need to be sympathetic towards the material. There we go. So you can see us just finishing off that bit there. Now, the reason that I do put that little twist, the little bit of decoration on the bells just a little bit higher, is you've also got to take just that little bit extra off just above the bells. So you've got to take that into consideration.
Which is something completely different to me,
Yeah.
because I never do that.
Yeah, so that's why when Dad's saying, do you think they're a bit high, that's got to be considered, is that above those bells, I do a little bit of shaping. Now I need, yes, I got a piece there. There we are. I need a piece of sandpaper. I got a P120. Later on, I will use a softer piece of sandpaper, because all of this on the outside, we've got a little bit of carving on there, but all of that around the outside, that all needs sanding. So that all needs finishing. So we're just going to sand these bells off just like so. Sand them both off, and then after, we're just going to put that little bit of decoration. And that is pretty much, these little bits here are going to annoy me, so I'm going to have to take those off before I hand it to Dad. He is then going to take it in next door, and he's going to sand that one. And hopefully that will then give you an idea. It'll show you how the love spoon is coming together, how it's going to actually look.
You want the shellac on it, do you?
No, I want you to sand it. What I'll do.
Do you want the shellac afterwards or not?
You could do. The difficulty is that we've got a few hours of finishing on this one.
Yeah.
There's a few little marks from where it's been on the saw and where we've cut out initially. They're going to have to be carved and sanded out as well.
Okay.
This is very much just to give everyone an idea of how we carve a bespoke spoon from start to finish. As I said, apologies, I have no idea what was going on with the live streaming signal initially. So yeah, that's beyond my expertise. So yeah, this is to give you an idea. Hopefully, it will, for how a bespoke love spoon, how we actually hand carve it. It's only one part of the process. What I'm going to do as well, just going to use a finer piece of sandpaper. And all of this, we'd have to go over all of this where we carved in there. That needs sanding as well. There's plenty of work left in this one, but it gives you an idea for that stage, the actual hand carving stage. It gives you a good idea of how that is actually undertaken. Right, let's have a little look. We're going to go, now I'm going to use a bigger gouge. Again, this is something that you've got to judge for yourself. What shape, what size.
I'd go down lower, Dave.
No. There we are. That's where we're going. And this is what you'll find is that different people, different ideas. And that's how we, I'm going to change over to the smaller one. Slightly smaller, just to finish, because I think we'll get two in there. Just like so. And then, same the other side. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, it's slightly different in terms of opinions, because I tend to take out a little bit more, but that's just my natural style of carving, is to take out a little bit extra, just like so. And we're now on to the sort of details in the carving, and then after this it'll be the finishing. Now, just to finish off this live stream then, as I said, Dad's going to sand this one for me. Or should I go and sand it and you do a little demonstration and explanation of carving something while I'm doing it?
I haven't got anything to carve, you know.
Have a little look, see if there's something simple that you can hand carve. There we go. 1, 2. 3. Last one. Just in like so. There we are. So that's just a little bit of decoration. Just a little bit of decoration just to finish off the bells. Just tidy up that side. Have you got something there to carve?
I got that one, but if I could find one, I could do the ship on the ocean, or I could do a flower, whichever. Oh dear dear.
There we are. Right. Now that last little bit that I mentioned, we're just going to take the just to carve it down just a little bit here. Just there's a sharp edge that I didn't want to leave on, so we're just taking that sharp edge just off like so, and that is the hand carving on that one. I tell you what then, I'm going to hand that one to Dad. He's going to go and sand it.
There we are.
And I will...
You just want the paper off, dear?
Yes, please. Yeah, so he's going to go and just sand that and just shape it a little bit. So you can just see what that looks like. This is a love spoon that I've started yesterday. So whilst he's doing that, we just do a simple little carving for you all to see. Let's have a little look. Right, I'm going to do this one here. So just a little bit working on the bowl. So you can see it's just working on that bowl, working towards the centre. This is actually a lower quality mahogany that we're carving. Not the best wood for working in, but hopefully this gives you an idea of the hand carving of the bowl. You may notice as well, what I'm doing is where we do a love spoon like this, because it's a standard spoon, we use a router and a template to take out the bulk of the wood. The problem with doing that is where you go against the grain, it scuffs, it burns, that sort of thing. There we are. So just working in that direction. Just bringing that spoon in. It's just so you can see that bespoke love spoon. Right, so we put that back in front of the camera for you all to see. I'm going to do a little bit of finishing off. Do you want to put some shellac on there for everyone to see? Yeah. Okay, things that I want to address after it's been on the sander. There's a little bit more detail on the eye of the swan. We've got this stem, this twist. Let's just take one of these out. Right, just like so. I'm going to just sand this a little bit, because that's one of the things that I would do. There are a few little burn marks, things like that that we need to take out. Dad's just starting to shellac the top of the love spoon for us to see. I'm just going to do a bit of sanding on this stem here. So as I mentioned before, this is a bespoke spoon that Bill asked us to make. Right. I don't want to blow it into the shellac.
Well, that's the good thing about this shellac. It's so easy to apply.
Yeah. Right, there we are. So it's just to shape it just a little bit on the stem. And I'm going to move out the way, and Dad then can shellac the rest of it. There we are, in front of the camera. There we are. So you'll just see with that shellac, you'll see that we're getting now towards the final colour that the love spoon will be. I believe, I can't remember 100%, but I believe it's for a golden wedding anniversary. I think. Don't quote me on that one. Hence, oak is known as golden oak, so you get that beautiful golden colour as well as that beautiful medullary ray.
Yeah.
So having that colour and character in the woods and in the grain, it really does bring it out.
Yeah, the only thing, Dave, I think he wanted a mahogany one.
Oh,
there we are.
There we are. We'll have to start again. Yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed seeing that one being made. It's great fun. This is something that we've always done at our workshop, where we've demonstrated how to carve love spoons, and we carve all sorts of different spoons. We've always been doing that, demonstrating to people, and so since lockdown we haven't been able to do it, so that's why we've been doing more live streaming. Hopefully you've enjoyed seeing how that's done. That one there with the shellac on, hopefully that will give you a better idea. No, bring him forward.
There we are.
What it is, he's trying to work it out on the computer, but the computer's got a delay. There you go. So we got that in the vice, just like so. Yeah, we got some different videos coming up. We've got that documentary coming up. We've also been asked to do a live stream. That'll be coming up soon. We'll be doing regular updates. Next week's live stream, it'll be a much shorter live stream next week, where I am hoping to do a demonstration of how we actually design a love spoon. So hopefully that will be interesting for you all to see. Any requests, any comments, any videos that you'd like to see us doing, put those in the comment section. We'd be delighted to make anything, and to focus on any areas of wood carving, love spoon carving that you're interested in. Thank you for anybody who has watched or anybody who is watching. And as always, we'll be back again soon with more videos. Thank you all.